just grains, vegetables.
There in that eat all those things, but it's those simple rules. It's very difficult to get the microbiome of the dog because that has implications for mental health, for digestive health, for all sorts of reasons, hormones and the rest of it too. So
It's evolution of the dog and the domestication of the dog, or having an animal that can live amongst humans. First of all, I would like to welcome you in my channel, and I would like just to get exposed to this very important topic that everybody's talking about. And I would start our chat with asking you, who are you, if you can introduce yourself, and what is it that you're doing?
Okay, I've been a vet for over 25 years. I started off as a very conventional vet, and after a few years suddenly realized that there was another way of working, so I sort of decided, I went into the alternative side a little bit, and then started realizing that that wasn't the only way, that we hadn't been fully informed at university, and actually commercial pet food isn't great for our dogs, that they're carnivores, they're supposed to eat raw meat and bone. And so I started looking into that side of things quite a lot. I linked up with Tom Lonsdale, who is one of the first guys to have written books on feeding raw, and he and I became good friends. And then he stood for raw college elections every year, and I used to nominate him every year. So I've known Tom for a long time, and I basically follow his way of feeding raw because I think it's the simplest, and I think it's the best. And I think we try and manipulate the diet and do too much interference. And, you know, we like to think that we're clever, but actually nature's already got it sorted. And the less interference we do, the less likelihood we have of getting it wrong. And I think that's where I come from on the raw diet side of things.
Right. هل الكلاب يعتبروا carnivore أو لحمات أو omnivore اللي هم بياكلوا لحمة وعشب? Are dogs carnivores or omnivores? In your opinion?
They are carnivores. They are carnivores. They are what's called facultative carnivores, which means that they are primarily carnivores, and they have got some ability to eat plant material to a certain degree. So maybe they might eat some fruit, but there's a large difference between eating what they need to survive when times are hard and being able to scavenge, eat a little bit of plant material to get them through a hard winter, and what they thrive on when meat and bone and prey is plentiful. And we know we're not looking to just get our pets just to survive. We want them to thrive. And, if you give them the opportunity, they will thrive on raw meat and bone. There was I think it was a German chap who wrote a book, and he called it "Cats Would Choose Mice." And and to me that's what it's all about. Dogs haven't been domesticated in the way that we think that has changed their physiology or their anatomy or anything like that. They are still basically, by their anatomy and by their physiology, they are carnivores. And I can go into the anatomy and the physiology a bit more if you want me to on that side of things. But they are basically carnivores.
But yeah, they've got those ancestors. They've got those canines. They've got all of those like kitchen knives for a reason.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
The jaw opens like that. It's up and down only. If you look at a cow or or a camel or whatever, they're grinding their food and it's going side to side because they need the wide teeth at the molars at the back to act as a mortar and pestle, really, and to grind the plant material, to break down the cell wall to get to the nutrients inside. Dogs don't have that. They don't have a hinge. The way their jaw is hinged, it cannot move sideways, because when they're biting on a bone, they need all the force to go down. They don't need the jaw to suddenly whip off to the side and cause problems that way. So their jaw is definitely 100% carnivore's jaw, and the teeth are very much designed for ripping and tearing, killing, obviously, with the canines. And the incisors are pulling meat off the bone, and that's a good thing to get them to do. And the back teeth are designed really for crunching and crushing bone and swallowing it, not for grinding plant material. And I always liken it to putting the right fuel in an engine. If you put petrol in a diesel car, it's going to break down. And to me, that's very much, if you're going to put plant material in a carnivore, they'll survive, they'll go on for a little bit, but ultimately they break down.
It might run, it will go for a few miles, it's just going to break down.
Exactly.
Right. ما هي فوائد الاكل الني? So what do you think the benefits of raw feeding? What are the benefits of raw feeding that we can see on the dog in general?
Okay, there's all sorts of benefits. When you're feeding raw meat and bone in a lump, which is how they're designed, there's none of this pre-ground, because there's no pre-grinding in the wild. It comes in lumps. It usually comes on 4 legs, or else it's someone else has already caught it, or it's died and it's live meat on the bone. So that the chemical aspect of food, which is what a lot of the pet companies are just concentrating on, is only half of the story. The physical way in which the food is presented is equally important. So when they are crunching up the bones and pulling the meat off the bone, they're basically cleaning their teeth. So they're cleaning all the tartar that might be building up. They're keeping the gums strong so the join between the gums and the teeth stays strong. And when they're pulling the meat off the bone, then they're basically flossing their teeth as well. So the teeth they're a self-cleaning mechanism. And if they're fed a raw diet, then they don't have to have dentals on an annual basis. You don't get all that smelly breath. You don't get bacteria that can get in when the join between the gums and the teeth becomes weak. That's when bacteria, obviously from the build-up of tartar that happens, that bacteria can get into the body through that gum tooth margin, and it becomes a constant drain on the immune system to try and keep the infection under control. And we know from human dentistry, that's where we get pockets in the gums where bacteria and infection can set up decay later on. And obviously, you can get abscesses and all sorts of problems with the teeth. So, part of it is the actual health of the mouth itself. The other thing is they've got a very acidic stomach. So they will dissolve the meat in the bone, and what comes out the other end is usually about a third in volume compared to what they used to bring if they were fed kibbles or plant-based material before. Then the volume will be considerably less, which is much more pleasant for everybody. And it's hard, so when they're actually going to the toilet, it actually helps to express the anal glands, which then stops them having anal gland problems and impactions because the material isn't building up in there. And in the sun it will go white and it will crumble and go to dust. All these problems we get in public parks and on the streets and things is by plant material that's indigestible and insoluble. And it just sits there because nothing's broken it down, and it can't be broken down. And it's, dogs don't have the physiology. They don't have those fermenting stomachs that the herbivores have to ferment the plant material and get the nutrients from it. So when the dog's immune system isn't under total bombardment, and they're getting the right nutrients in the right form, they're getting all the minerals they need from the bone, they're getting plenty of protein, they're not getting lots of carbohydrates, so they don't get overweight, they don't get all the diabetes, all the metabolic problems. They're just so much healthier. I can tell now, if I stroke a dog, I can tell whether it's being fed raw or whether it's being fed kibble just by the feel of the coat. And how they look as well. So, it's, as I say, it's the difference between surviving and thriving. And we should all know what a thriving dog looks like. And when they're fed raw, that's what they do. And that's what they're designed for.
Right. في حد من الناس قال لك ان مش معنى ان الكلب والديب هم قريبين من بعض وبينتسبوا لبعض انهم ياكلوا نفس الاكل لان الكلب خلاص بقى حيوان مستأنس. I'm just saying that there's somebody recently who started telling people that the dog should not be eating like a wolf because dogs are domesticated. They should eat our house food, but wolves are wild animals. What's your comment on that?
Well, the classification of a dog is basically a subset of the grey wolf.
Yeah, so, Canis lupus familiaris. Yeah,
that is exactly precisely. So, unless the Smithsonian has got it wrong, which I don't think they have, then they are fundamentally a wolf in essence, and certainly some of their other behaviour would back that up. They circle before they lie down. If they're allowed to run in packs, they'll run as a pack. They'll, so they are basically wolves, and they haven't changed their physiology. They still have a very acidic stomach. They don't produce amylase as an enzyme to start digesting carbohydrates. And the fact that obesity, in countries where they've been feeding kibble for, a long time, 30, 40 years, USA and UK, the biggest problem is obesity.
Yeah, that's true.
And diabetes, and diabetes and cancers and all the rest of it. And that there's a saying which is "we are what we eat." And if that commercial pet food was so healthy, why are the dogs so ill? And why are the raw-fed dogs so healthy if it's not what they should be eating? It's as simple as that. They might have a few more enzymes to digest a little bit more carbohydrates than a wolf, but as I said, that's it's a small adaptation. There's maybe a few genes difference. It's not a significant fundamental change in what they are, and that the proof is what in how they eat. And raw-fed dogs, on the whole, do well. And my last terrier lived till he was 17 and didn't have any medication.
Fantastic.
So it can be done. And vets, unfortunately, because our job is to see ill animals, we only see things when things have gone wrong. And because raw-fed dogs are so healthy on the whole, most vets don't see many healthy dogs. They don't see the raw-fed dogs. And so they only see it when something has gone wrong, and then they tend to automatically blame it on the raw feeding instead of actually recognising that actually if it had been any other kibble-fed dog, they'd have probably seen it 5 or 6 times before they saw it anyway. So it's not a sound argument.
Right. There's another claim here, which is saying, which I think doesn't make any sense science-wise. في ادعاء بيقول ان الكلاب معدتها تطورت وبقت إنها تقبل الحبوب والأكل الخضار وما إلى ذلك. So somebody said that or claimed, and actually there are papers and scientists say that the dog's stomach or the dog's digestive system has evolved to become able to digest grains, vegetables, and house food. So did it really evolve? Because the word evolve is like a really big word, you know, and it takes millions of years to evolve.
Absolutely, I think you've hit the nail on the head there. In that evolution doesn't happen overnight.
Exactly.
It's it takes time. They have got the ability to eat some of those things, but it doesn't necessarily make them healthy, which is ultimately what we're trying to do. We're trying to feed for health, not for survival. And
adaptation.
They may be able to, and on all those plants feeds have got to be cooked. They've got to get, the plant walls are very tough, and that's why we cook. Mostly a lot of our plant material as well, because we've got to. That's the best way that we can get the most nutrients out of plant material as well. So when dogs have evolved to cook, make fire, and build a pot and put the food in it and cook, I will believe they have evolved to eat plants. But because if my dog likes a bit of carrot, or if I'm having some peanuts or something, he likes to have the odd little treat. He feels like he's having what I'm having, and I'll give it to him. But it will come out the following day looking exactly the same as it did when it went in. He has got almost zero nutrients out of that food because it hasn't changed. He hasn't got the time to do it. The passage time.
Distance. Yeah,
the passage time of food through the dog is relatively quick. Because nature doesn't want meat to get rotten inside the dog. That's why things happen quickly. So there isn't the time for plant material to stay there to get broken down effectively, and that's why herbivores have they either have four stomachs like a cow and goats and sheep, or they have a hind fermenting gut like horses. But whatever they've got, there is that time for an ability to ferment the food, and it's actually not them that's actually breaking the food down. It's the bacteria that's in those fermenting vats that actually break the food down. So the dogs haven't got that bacterial mix that requires them to, what they require to be able to ferment that plant food. So no, they haven't evolved. They can utilize it when it's cooked, but they're not designed to eat carbohydrates. There is no established figure for the carbohydrate requirement for a dog. If you look in any of the nutrition textbooks, and these are produced by, my textbook was given to me by Hills. So if they can't establish, or I've got no evidence to say that there's a dietary requirement for carbohydrate when their foods are mostly based on carbohydrate, you get an idea of what real science is behind what they're doing, and there's actually very little. It's all about money, unfortunately.